The Neil Prendeville Show. Dial 1850-104-106. Lines are now open.
Cork's Red FM.
The former Lord Mayor, John Murray, was convicted in 2013 of multiple counts of sexual assault on a teenage girl over a 2-year period. He carried out his first attack in 1996 when his victim was just 13 years old. His victim is Elaine Murray, his granddaughter. She joins me by phone. Elaine, good morning.
Good morning, Neil. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate this opportunity to speak after all these years.
This is your first time actually saying anything publicly about this. In fact, this is the first time that anybody will ever know that you were in fact John Murray's granddaughter. Why have
exactly.
you? Why? And I respect your privacy and your anonymity up until this point. And I also can never even begin to imagine how difficult it must have been for you having a daughter myself. However, why have you now decided to speak?
I suppose, Neil, 3 years have passed. I have got a lot of help and a lot of support since then that I can talk about this topic now, and I can put it back in its box after the conversation, and it doesn't need to affect me anymore. But the reason I wanted to ring you today is because, first of all, I wanted the people of the city to know that I am his granddaughter, and that there has been a lot of talk this morning and yesterday about a family grieving. And there are members of the Murray family that will be grieving, but there has been such a divide in our family that for other members, this is a relief to us that man is gone. And I'm just so disappointed that, again, it's back in the media again. It's back in the media for all the wrong reasons. I'm just so upset that that it was even mentioned in City Council the other night. It shouldn't have had to have even been a topic. I shouldn't have to talk to you today. But the reason I wanted to is to let people know that while there are members of the family grieving, there's other members of the family that are certainly not grieving today for that man.
Okay, and without wishing to go into that in too much detail, out of respect for all of the family, that divide is between those who, believe in his innocence and those who believe in his guilt. Am I right?
Exactly. Amongst John Murray's own children. He had 5. 3 of them were mentioned in his death notice. My dad and my aunt were not mentioned. They stuck by me the whole way, obviously. My parents, my sisters, my aunt and her family were so supportive. So I just wanted people to know that for my family and for my aunt's family, we are most certainly not grieving.
And the issues in council with regards to offers of condolence and, the whole thing involving the portrait, how do you feel about those? Are they like slaps in the face to you? Is it almost like a form of assault again?
They are, of course. I mean, it was I had to contact the Lord Mayor at the time to get that picture down. Chris O'Leary, who never even knew me at the time, fought my case unknown to himself without even knowing me. And we had to challenge that at the time to take it down. There was numerous meetings before that picture was taken down. Just going back to what you said earlier, I knew I couldn't airbrush history. I never attempted to airbrush history. His name is still in bronze on plaques around the city, and I appreciate that. But for me, the photograph was a very, very big deal. I would be in and out of City Hall a lot, and I just didn't want to have to see that photograph, and I didn't want other victims of abuse to have to look at a photograph of a convicted sex offender.
Yeah, and it was taken down.
It was taken down, but I had to contact them myself before it was taken down.
How comfortable are you talking about your childhood? And because in the court reports it was said that you stayed quiet for quite a long time because you were so young. You thought that nobody would believe you, and he had told you to stay quiet. Isn't that right?
No, I was never threatened, and I will say I said that at the time. He never threatened me to stay quiet because he never had to. It was an intimidation tactic. I was just too afraid to speak, but he never actually threatened me not to speak, and I did say that in the court at the time. He was a powerful man, Neil. He was a very big, strong man. He was only in his early 60s at the time, and he was very, very fit. We were a very large family. There was a point when we were very, very united, and I just didn't think I would be believed. But as the years went by and I tried to cope with my issues, something happened in me a couple of years back that made me realise that it's something I just could not carry anymore. And I did disclose to my family at that stage.
You told your parents and your family? I
told my parents in a family meeting was called, yeah.
And he was called to that, but denied any involvement and said he didn't do it?
No, he admitted it. He admitted it in front of our entire family. He admitted it.
Were you there when he did admit that?
I was there. He admitted certain aspects of the abuse. And by the time we got to court, he had retracted his admission, and he said the only reason he admitted it was because he feared for his life, that my father was going to cause some sort of rumpus, as he called it at the time. So he thought by admitting the abuse, he was going to alleviate the problem, and he was going to alleviate whatever he thought my fault was.
Or did he feel that admitting at the family conference might well just be the end of it?
Maybe so. I don't know, but all I know is that by the time we got to court, he had a defence made up that the only reason he admitted it was because he feared for his life.
How were you? How did you deal with that court and that trial?
It was extremely hard. I mean, it was very, very well publicised at the time. You covered it a lot at the time on the other station. It was all over the media. It was national news. It was very, very hard. And at the same time, I had to go to work. I had to go about my daily business. There was a lot of speculation at the time over who the victim was. Cork is a small place. It filtered out. Some people did know it was me. People were very, very supportive. But it was very difficult. It was very difficult for my partner, who had to read it in the paper. It was very, very difficult for my sisters, who had to sit there and listen to it. It was an awful trial, and it was a horrible, horrible experience.
What about your mum and dad? How did they find it?
They were devastated. I mean, my dad is the only boy. He found it very difficult. Of course, he did. That this would have happened to his daughter by the man he was supposed to be able to trust. But the court system in this country now, it's not built for victims. John Murray was furnished with an entire book of evidence. I didn't get that. I had no idea what kind of defence they were going to mount. The barrister, the prosecution barrister, wasn't working for me. He was working for the state. I met him that morning. I had no idea what kind of questions he was going to ask me. How
old would you have been at the time then for the case, Elaine?
I was 30.
Okay.
Yeah. So
did you feel Did you feel as if you were on trial?
Oh, I did, of course, 100%. This country does not build cases for victims. It's horrific. Even the whole experience in the courtroom, there was no waiting area. We were all standing out in the corridor looking at each other. All the family looking at each other. It was horrific. During the recess, during the breaks, he was standing there at the door smoking. We had to walk past him. It's horrible.
That's all wrong.
It's completely wrong. It's completely wrong, Niall. And it doesn't encourage people to come forward. It really, really doesn't. The Gardaí were absolutely fantastic. They couldn't have done more for us at the time, and I'm still in touch with them. The detectives on the case, Cathy Houlihan and Shane Bergen, they were fantastic. But when it came to trial stage, it just was not built for us.
Can I ask you a little about the sentence? 4 years with 3 suspended. How do you and your close family feel about that?
It's at the time, Niall, I was happy he received a custodial sentence at all, because these cases are so hard to prove. There's 5% conviction rate, and we were very glad that we were in that 5%. When it came down to it, I thought, it was very, very lenient, and I would have spoke to Own English in the Examiner at the time that he was released after 9 months. That I couldn't understand. If at the end of it all he got was a year, he should have served the year. But at the end of the day, there was reports then coming back to us that he was having a great time in prison and he was involved in this, that and the other. But look, that's only stories. At the end of the day, he was in prison and his doors were locked at night.
But in the benefit of hindsight, you don't regret taking the case, even though you went through so much.
No, I don't regret. It was very, very hard. It burst the family in half. It was very tough on my father and my mother and my aunt. They're so difficult to prove, but I wouldn't discourage other people from coming forward. They are very difficult. As I said, the courts don't work in the favour of the victim. But I just had a really good support network from the people that mattered.
And what effect did it have on your life from when it happened up until now? Do you live with it all of the time?
Not anymore. As I said, I can put, after this conversation now, I can put this back in the box. and I can go and I can do my job today, and I can go home this evening and make my dinner. I can deal with it now. But, I mean, as a teenager, it was very, very hard to deal with. It was very, very hard because I couldn't tell anybody. I was always known as the awkward one in the family with my cousins. What's wrong with her now? Why is she acting like this? There was always something wrong with me. I hated going to family occasions. I hated being around them. I just didn't know how to be around these people. There was family holidays for years. I didn't go on them. I couldn't be around them. I didn't know how to be around them. And it certainly affected my relationship with my family. For a number of years.
It must have been very difficult to be at family gatherings that John Murray was at then.
It was, and that's another reason why I wanted people to know that I am related to him, because like I would have seen comments online at the time, people being naive really. Why does she keep putting herself back in a situation where it would happen again and again? I couldn't avoid that man. I had no way of avoiding that man. If I just suddenly decided, no, I'm not going over to visit my grandmother anymore, that would have looked very suspicious.
Forgive me for asking this, Elaine, but the sexual abuse, the rape, the paedophilic activity, because you were a minor, it happened more than once, didn't it?
Oh, it did, of course. Yeah, it happened numerous times over the course of a few years. Yeah. And
it robbed you of your teen years. It probably affected your education. Well, I mean, I was lucky enough. I got a very good education. I repeated my leaving cert. I applied myself. I qualified. I graduated from UCC. But it took a lot of time. I mean, I did have an awful time through school. I was trying to deal with all this while trying to, be a teenager and grow up, and it was very difficult. There's people I talk to about it now who it makes sense to them why I was the way I was as a teenager. I recently spoke to one of my favourite teachers from school. I met her after years, and I had told her what I was going through at the time. And she was thinking back, 15, 20 years ago, and it made sense to her why I acted the way I did at the time. I wonder, do you realise how incredibly brave you are to come out now and say, it's me, my name is Elaine Murray, I am his granddaughter?
Thankfully, I'm married now, Neil, so I have changed my surname, which is great. I can... it is sad because it's my father's name, but I'm lucky enough now to be able to shake off that surname. I have a new surname. I think after 3 years, I was just ready to let people know the effect this man has had on our family.
Do you really believe that you were ready, Elaine, or did the events in council on Monday night force you to take this brave step?
My hand was forced. But I'm strong enough now to be able to deal with this. My hand was forced, it really was.
Did you, again, you don't have to answer any of these questions, but did you self-harm? Did you consider suicide? Did you consider ending it all? I self-harmed in the form of, I developed an eating disorder. I never attempted suicide, but I was very depressed. Very, very, very depressed, very withdrawn. I changed a lot in the space of a few years. I'm very lucky that I have amazing friends that I can still call my friends after 20 years. People that saw me through school and we still see each other. And my family were fantastic. The family that matter. My mother's extended family, they're just amazing people. That fracture in the family will never be repaired, and you don't believe, and you are not one for saying, I forgive him in death.
Oh God, no. No, there is no forgiveness. Well, I'm not religious anyway. For a start, I just said the word.
Yeah, but I suppose you don't have to be. You don't have to be religious to forgive.
No, and I don't believe that your sins are absolved or anything like that. No, I mean he died on the sex offenders register. There has been some naive comments made that when he dies, now will the family be fine? Family will never be fine. I never want to speak to those people again. I never want to confront those people again. Well, I do see them. I have seen them, members of the family over the last few years, quite recently. Cork is a very, very small place. We do pass each other. We just ignore each other. We don't make faces. I certainly don't anyway. I don't make faces. I've no interest. Some of them have been quite nasty with their reactions to other members of the family, but I've no interest in them. This is never going to be fixed. The split is there now. Our family now is my parents and my aunt's family. That's our family now.
I wish you well going forward. I really do. You sound to me as if you're in a very strong place, and I imagine there's lots of happiness in your life in spite of what happened in the past.
It's been a good year for us. We've had a lot of happy things to celebrate this year, so it's been great. And as I said, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak after all this time. I just wanted to clear a few things up. Those people can grieve today if they want, but we're certainly not grieving.
And to those that might be going through similar, or have children who are going through similar, what would you say to them, particularly when you were very critical of the whole court system and the prosecutorial nature in which you were dealt with, even though you were a victim? What would you tell them? Be strong?
Be strong, seek help. I mean, you're never going
Notice changes in your son or your daughter or things like that?
That's it. I mean, I have these conversations fairly regularly. Pay attention to your children. Pay attention to your siblings. If you think people are becoming very withdrawn, like my parents knew there was something wrong with me as a teenager. They constantly asked me what was wrong, and I didn't tell them. But at least I knew, I was aware that they knew something was wrong, if that makes sense.
Why didn't you say something? Why didn't you say something then? Do you ever think back to that?
I do, I often wonder why I didn't say it. I would have, if I had spoken about it earlier, I could have stopped a lot of other things from happening. But hindsight is a great thing, Neil. And I mean, I'm 33 years old now. At 13, I wasn't the woman I am now. You're an
incredibly strong woman now. That's the impression that I get from you. Incredibly confident as well. What would you say to Sean Martin this morning then?
I didn't want to come on here for a slang and match, but he's a disgrace. He's an absolute, complete and utter disgrace. He did know John Murray. I know he did. He was in his pocket a bit. I know there will be other former Lord Mayors and former politicians attend that funeral today. But my whole point of talking to Chris O'Leary the other day was that I just wanted to make sure this wasn't going to be recognised in any official capacity, especially for the year that's in it, and when we're honouring people. To
the likes of John O'Donovan who say, in spite of this and in spite of what happened to you, the man did a tremendous amount of good. He was referring to medical cards and corporation houses.
John O'Donovan is a crony for a start. He's very much in his pocket. John O'Donovan knows John Murray, the politician. He does not know John Murray, the father, the grandfather, the husband. He's a street angel, a house devil. I've heard John O'Donovan on other radio stations talking about pro-life, right to life. What about my right to life? I had no right to life as a teenager. John O'Donovan's a hypocrite as far as I'm concerned. I don't even take his comments into consideration. I've heard him talking about so many things now on radio stations over the years. His comments there meant nothing to me, to be honest. As I said, he knew the politician. He didn't know the man.
You knew both.
I knew both, exactly.
Street angel, house devil. You will now put it back into the box, as you say. Can I say that there is huge support coming in right now for you, Elaine, not just by text here, but on our social media services as well. Tremendous respect, and I include myself in that. I wish you and your family, and I wish you a happy life.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks
for taking my call.
Thanks a million.
Elaine Murray, granddaughter of the late John Murray. Back after 10 on 1850 104 106. You can text 0868 104 106. More after 10, guys.
The Neil Prendeville Show.
With Nissan, you'll never look back with our pioneering innovation behind you.
Lines open on 1850 104 106. Somebody makes a comparison to an Olympian who's caught drug cheating and how they lose their medal and they're wiped from the history books, and that the same should happen for somebody who has dishonoured the office of Lord Mayor by doing what, say, for instance, John Murray did and was found guilty of in a court of law to his niece. Incredibly brave woman. I wonder if she realises how brave she is. Huge respect for her from me, and I imagine from many, many people, for coming forward like that. Can I just also acknowledge that today is the day of John Murray's funeral. That's when he will be laid to rest. Don't know what kind of rest John Murray had in his head for all of the years. Following the abuse, living with the abuse, living with what he did to his niece, and being found guilty and spending time in jail. I don't know what kind of contrition ever went through John Murray's mind, head or heart, because I haven't spoken to him in many a long year. And I imagine that would be the case also with regards to one of John Murray's sons, Daniel, who would be Elaine's dad. Daniel, son of the late Lord Mayor John Murray, who died at the weekend. Daniel, good morning.
Good morning, Neil. How are you?
I'm well.
I guess it's a small bit emotional after listening to my daughter.
Well, can I tell you, you should be incredibly proud of her. She's a wonderfully reared girl. Credit to you and your wife.
Yes. Neil, I rang in it because this was we had no intentions of doing this. And believe me, we had none, but our hand was forced. You know, we became the forgotten family. You know, the echoes and the examiners and things during the week for condolences and survived by the 3 daughters. Forgot like that, you know, that John Murray didn't have 3 children, he had 5 children. And we broke because we knew the truth. And John Murray stood up in front of the family, all the family. Not the nephews and nieces, no. My children, yes, but not the nephews and nieces. And I have no animosity whatsoever towards my nephews and nieces. Because they didn't know the truth. They didn't listen to the truth being told. And so, excuse me, I have no hard feelings to all of them. But we became the forgotten family. We had people like John O'Donovan going on the radios yesterday and today, you know, telling people how great a man he was. John O'Donovan didn't know that man. John O'Donovan knew the politician. The guy that sang the songs and the guy that was the great crack at the council parties and the council junkets. That's who they knew. We knew a different John Murray. And I'm so proud of my daughter. They wanted us to brush it under the carpet. But we didn't. We did the right thing. I had to stop. We did the right thing. And because we did the right thing, people filtered away from us one by one. My sister Linda, that court case could have gone against us because they made me out to be a bully boy. They made me out to be a courier. I was never a courier in my life. And only for my sister went to understand in that court. And she spoke up for me. Excuse me now, Neil. Excuse me. She spoke up for me and told the truth when the rest of them should have been telling the truth. You know, that court case could have gone against us because it's so hard to prove what we proved. It's so hard for my daughter to pick up the courage to do what she did. I know there are people out there.
Elaine was very upset with the fact that the book of evidence would have been given to your dad and to his legal team. He would know what's coming and they could prepare accordingly. Am I right?
Yes, of course. And the barrister was changed on the Friday, but the case was on a Monday, and the barrister was changed that Friday. So the barrister had to look over that case over the weekend.
And tell me about how you felt when Elaine eventually confided in you as to, you know, what you had gone through as a child.
I tell you, people like want to know I didn't go over and break his legs, and I didn't go over and do that, you know. And you know, I wanted to, but it wasn't my nature to do that. I wasn't him. I wasn't the type of person that he was. I didn't want to make a victim out of him. You know, when I was working that day and I got a phone call from my wife saying, you know, what are you doing? Are you busy? I'm a taxi driver, mate. And, you know, I went home expecting like that she had broken up with her boyfriend. She might be pregnant. I didn't know I didn't expect that. No, I knew John Murray was a violent man because I saw violence in my childhood. I saw violence all my life. But I didn't know he was capable of doing that.
Because she described him as a street angel, house devil.
Yes. No, I described him as that yesterday. Yeah. Yes. I went home, and my daughter. When I went home, my daughter started crying, and she said, "You know, Dad." And she broke down crying. Dad, I can't hold this any longer now. That my mother wasn't long passed away. She was about 3 months passed away. She loved my mother. I loved my mother. My mother loved us.
Did Elaine want to wait until her grandmother had passed away to save her the pain?
Yeah, and she told me, she said, I don't need to keep this any longer, Dad. I said, what are you telling me? And she told me, I broke down crying, obviously. I was in a rage. I wanted to go over and do what, but as I said, I'm not him. I'm not him. I was never him.
So tell me, there was a family conference call then, was there?
Yes, I phoned. I worried for my sisters. I worried for my nieces, my nephews. I worried for everybody, and I called them up. One came up with a husband, Linda came up with a husband, the rest of them, the husbands didn't come up. One wasn't allowed to come up, and we told the story. They all hugged her, kissed her, sympathised with her, and the story's told.
Was your dad, John Murray, there?
No, that didn't happen. I wanted to see how far this went, and there were stories told.
But wasn't he confronted, though?
He was confronted the following night. I went over with my family the following night. I told one of my sisters to have people there just in case I flipped. And it was all verbal, screaming and roaring. My daughter came in with me. She is my turn now. And he was confronted. And he denied it first. Then he said the only thing he ever did was give her money for drinking drugs. Talking about trying to ignite something. Like, we left the house and we went down to my sister's out there. We're all waiting in anticipation. Well, what happened? And the general consensus among them, bar one, was, yeah, we'll deal with it in our own way. And my head was gone, Neil. My head was gone. I just couldn't deal with it at the time. I could have gone over. I had a key to that house. I could have gone over that night when I had the first and do what I wanted to do and all that,
Yes.
And he was saying terrible things. The man actually got up, went down to the end of the road, crossed his legs and folded his arms, and we had the meeting among ourselves. We would say that first we deal with it in our own way, and then it kind of emerged that in our own way was push it onto the carpet, like most people did in this country. We all knew about the institutions, the whispers, the secrets, the rumours about institutions down to the line, but nobody ever acted on, doing anything until some brave people came forward in the 90s. And, they told their stories, and more people told their stories. Prime example like that is Jimmy Savile in England. Jimmy Savile was the great guy, but it transpired after, but there was always whispers. Jimmy Savile got a knighthood, and then it came out, something, the spark was ignited, I said, by him getting his knighthood.
People begun to see the hypocrisy of him, and then started.
But at least in England, he was stripped of his knighthood. His family took down his headstone.
I'll come to that. I'll come to that aspect of your dad in a moment, if you bear with me. But
I said I'd go back to the whole thing. Everything I'm saying is in the transcripts of the crowd.
But there was a stage when your dad, John Murray.
Yes.
Did admit to the family.
Yes, I will tell you about that. I came home from work. I couldn't walk. I mean, you tried to drive the car in that condition that my head was gone. On the Thursday after the Monday night, I came home and I got a phone call. And his name was still in his number was still in my phone, and his name came up, and I wasn't going to answer it. But it was the best thing I ever did, answering that phone call, because it was him on the phone apologising to me for what he did to me and my family. And he was sorry, and I hope he said, I'd hope I forgive him someday. So it's not me you need to talk to. It's me you need to talk to my sisters and my family, all of us together, and tell them what you did. And there was a meeting arranged, and this all came out in the trial, and he admitted to that in the trial. And there was a meeting arranged for one of my sister's house, and at that meeting he apologised for what he did. And my daughter extracted a form, and she said, okay, what did you do? And first of all he said, did I do this? No, she said, no, don't tell me, don't ask me what you did. I want you to tell them what you did. My daughter was a very articulate girl, a very intelligent girl, even though there was a character assassination trying to be done on my daughter. And then he proceeded to tell what he did. And people were screaming, roaring, left the room. That's in all the transcript of the crime. I'm not telling you anything that wasn't said in the court case. That's all in the transcripts. People left. They all heard us, but they all didn't support us.
And you had to sit through this as a dad.
Through this as a dad, yeah. As I said, people are thinking, why didn't you kill him? Why didn't you break his legs? If I broke an 81-year-old's legs, till I was the demon, then I would have been what he would try to portray me to be, and he would have been the victim.
Okay,
my daughter's case would have been forgotten about.
So at that point, you involved the Garda Síochána?
Yes.
Okay.
And that became the game changer, as one nephew said to my sister when the guards arrived at my sister's door. That was the game changer.
Was that Linda's door?
Yes.
Let me bring Linda at this point. Linda, good morning.
Good morning, Neil.
Thank you for taking the call. It's not anything that I'm sure you woke up this morning thinking that you would do. So I do appreciate it, particularly if you find it difficult.
Neil, myself, my brother and our families never wanted to talk about this again. This is down to Sean Martin. He brought this into the light on Tuesday night at that meeting, and this is why this has all been drawn up again. So this is not down to my brother's family or my family. This was brought up at a meeting. This was all stirred up again at that meeting the other night, and this is how this has come to light again.
Yeah, how do you feel about him bringing this up, or looking for a tribute, looking for condolences to be sent out, trying to an extent even praise the positive aspects of your father's life?
I'm extremely angry and I'm extremely disappointed, to be honest with you. I also want to say John Donovan is not representing all of the Murray family. There were 5 children there. 2 of us hadn't been recognised, and he is certainly not representing me and my brother, or our families,
or your niece, for that matter,
or my nieces.
You neither you nor your brother will be at the funeral today.
No.
Yeah. In spite of the fact that this man was your dad.
I have no comment on that, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I'm actually extremely upset here, as my brother is. I can hear. My brother is a wonderful man, an amazing father. He was an amazing brother to all of us, but sadly that was forgotten. An amazing uncle, and his family and him were brushed aside when he needed support. He wasn't given it. When my niece needed support, she wasn't given it.
Isn't it very wrong that victims and their immediate family and loved ones go into court, and as your brother has just been saying now, almost feel as if they're on trial and are portrayed in a very negative way? He referred to the fact that the courts tried to make him out, the defence tried to make him out to be a bully and a bad man and a violent man.
Yes, they did.
Just to try and tarnish the prosecution's case.
Yes, they did, and it couldn't be further from the truth. He was always there for me, my family, my sisters. He is one of the nicest guys you could ever meet. A gentleman, something that his father never was. And
did you have a tough childhood, Linda?
To be honest, Neil, I'm not on here to comment about that. You know, I really am not. I'm here to support my brother and my niece in this, and just to make sure that John O'Donovan, as he said, is not representing all of the Murray family. And
so to speak about things like medical cards or nursing homes or corporation houses. Rubbish.
That's what this is not about that. This is about supporting sexual abuse victims. This is, as I said, we did not want this. This has been brought up by a member of council who should be ashamed of himself. As my brother said yesterday, probably people that voted him into that position are abuse victims themselves. And he should not have brought this up at that meeting the other night. And I can just say shame on him.
Yeah. Tough one. It's a tough one for you. I appreciate you coming on. It's a tough one.
I would never ever do this, but I'm just so angry. I am just so angry at what was said there this morning. I'm not one for being in the public eye. I'm certainly not one for going on radio stations about something like this. Neither is my brother. But for that man to go on to say he was representing all of the Murray family, I felt I had to do this, because he certainly is not representing all of the Murray family.
Is this is this closed now with the funeral today, or is it just another chapter in a saga that never?
This is closed today for us, and we want to be left alone. And we have one another now, and that's all we need as far as we're concerned. This is closed for us today, and we don't want any more publicity about this. We didn't want this publicity. We didn't want this publicity. But this was brought into light by somebody who shouldn't have done this. And we had no option. I had no option but to come on and let you know today that I am not. He is not representing me.
How do you feel about your niece actually coming forward this morning and saying,
amazing.
This is my name, I was his granddaughter?
She is amazing. She has kept her anonymity for 3 years. And again, she felt she had to come on and do this morning. She is an amazing girl, and I am so, so proud of her.
Daniel?
Hi, Neil. I'm a small bit more composed now. So I'm sorry for the way I was going to go.
Will the fracture in the family ever be repaired?
No, the fracture will never be repaired. But we'll get closure now, Neil. Maybe if we didn't come on and say what we said this morning, in a quirky way, I'm thankful to Sean Martin to do what he did, because we had no intentions of doing this. But it's brought the truth into light now. That, it wasn't, condolences would not have been sent to John Murray's family. They would have been sent to a section of John Murray family. We would have forgotten once. As the victims are nearly always forgotten. And I hope there's people out there now listening to this that, girls, as I said, and boys and older women who were in institutions down through the years, that there are people out there that are the same as them, that suffered like them. And there is light at the end of the tunnel. There are people there that will support them. Mary Crillian, the Rape Crisis Centre, is an excellent person. She's a beautiful person. She's a very caring person. And there are other support groups like that in the city. And, I would advise these people, there was no shame. The shame is not with them. They were victims.
You must have had incredible dark times, though, Daniel, after you found out what happened to your beautiful daughter. You must, in a sense, have felt a tremendous sense of guilt.
I did because I couldn't understand why she wouldn't come. I could see now why she didn't, because he was, he was the John Murray that John O'Donovan knew. Everybody knew him. Everybody liked him. Nobody would have believed her. Anyway, it was said to her in court, why didn't you confide in your sisters? People would need to do research. And she said, why didn't I confide in my sister? You had 2 other sisters. Why didn't you confide in them? One was 9 and one was 5. For that to even be said to her in court. Who did research? She was 11, 12. Her other sister was 9 and the one below that was only 5. Why didn't you confide in them?
And I can see why you make comparisons to Jimmy Savile, this larger-than-life character, this very gregarious person.
But at least his country did the right thing. They stripped him of his title. His family even took down his headstone.
And in that regard, you are 100% behind the stripping of the portrait, the not sending out condolences, the airbrushing him from official life.
Yes, I know. You can strip him from official life. He was getting up to 2 or 3 years ago. He was still getting invitations, even though this case was pending. He was still getting invitations to as the next lawmayor to the council functions and things like that. Would you have been
in any way more sympathetic to him if he had pleaded guilty in court, your dad?
I wouldn't have sympathy for him. No, I wouldn't have. He did plead in front of the whole family, and everybody heard it.
But then he said in court that he pleaded. He said he admitted it to the family because he was in fear of his life. Was that a reference to you?
Actually, I will correct that. He said, I will correct that. He said he did it because my sister Linda was recovering from cancer at the time, and that he didn't want to cause her any more stress. He never even visited my sister when she was in hospital suffering from cancer, even though he lived a couple of 100 yards down the road. Never even visited her. That's the type of man he was. That's what he said. He said he was trying to ease the stress. No, our barrister was brilliant at the time. He said, I put it to you, there was no man would admit to being a paedophile. There was no man, and by saying you are that, and by saying overwrite me and my family who were only a couple of yards away from him, like that you did what you did to his daughter, that would have ignited it even more. I probably would have going, and it did make the situation worse. Everybody was screaming around. They were left some, as in you look in the transcripts of the
You're saying it's not an admission that one would make if one wasn't guilty of it. Yeah.
No. I would admit to being that. Do you know, Neil, when he was in prison, there was 4 or 5 ex-law males went to visit him in prison. And again, they have to sign in. That's true.
Why would one do that unless one believed that he was innocent?
No, yeah. See, they didn't know the John Murray that we knew. They knew the laughable guy, the guy that sang the songs and things like that, you know. They went to visit him in prison. But see, at that stage, like he was found guilty in an Irish court with a jury, and they visited him in prison. There's people that be on your show champion the causes of different things. You have them on your show regular, without drinking with him, and have been seen after he was convicted and after he came out of jail. Okay, he served his time, but they were still out in town drinking with him. You know,
are either of you religious, either yourself or Linda?
I would count to myself. I believe in God. Linda would believe in God. I wouldn't be a practicing, but I do believe in God.
Okay, yeah. But do you believe in a heaven or a hell or the hereafter?
Well, I do. I believe there is something. Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Where do you think he's gone?
Well, do you want me to tell you? I mean, there was people telling me that, you know, you have to get forgiven to get closure. No, I said there's only one man that will forgive him, and it's up to him to decide whether he'll forgive him or not, and that's God. Are
you like-minded in that regard, Linda?
Yes, I would be, Neil, yeah.
That you can't forgive. If no. God does, that's his own business.
God does, that's his own business, exactly.
Okay.
You know what happened during the trial that time when the priest stood up while the decision of the jury was pending, and there was a priest stood up in the church in Cork and asked his congregation to pray for his friend John Murray. Do you remember that?
Vaguely.
Yeah. Well, I know she did get an apology from that wing of the church, I must say.
That must have hurt.
A big time, and it was at a critical time in the trial, and that priest stood up in the altar in the church and said prayers for him. No, there was people in the congregation got up and walked out.
So what happened with your daughter, of course, was of a magnitude that one can't comprehend. But the court case wasn't far behind it.
No, the court case was harrowing, to be quite honest.
Harrowing is the word.
And what happened in the court case, we had to go through the questioning, and my daughter had to go through the cross-examination. Then it was found out that one of the jurors kind of dismissed themselves because of something she had seen on Facebook. So the whole thing had to be drawn out again. The jury had to be, and then we had to go through the cross-examination again. You know, it prolonged us. That made it worse.
Yeah. Some closure today.
Some closure today.
Some cleansing and maybe some relief in coming forward and speaking, beginning with Elaine, then your good self, and then Linda. And I thank you both for...
And I suppose, as I said in a quirky way, I'm thankful to Sean Martin, because that wouldn't have happened. And as my mother was out in the grave, that would not have happened. Should Sean Martin consider his position following this? Well, Sean Martin has a responsibility to his constituents, especially the people, not all his constituents, but especially the people that voted for him. And there are a lot of the constituents, people that voted him as well, voted for him, are victims. We've heard about the 1 in 3, that 1 in 3 people in this country, it was so bad, are victims of sexual and physical abuse. And we saw physical abuse as well, witnessed it. And when my daughter actually, came out with what she came out with, it brought a kind of sense of meaning to what we had witnessed and why things had happened that did happen in our house.
In your own childhood, yes. It made sense, you're saying. It made sense.
Yes, yeah. It did. It made sense, yeah. Should he consider his position? I don't think he would. He's a politician. He's a son of a paedophile or a brother of a paedophile leader. And, these people are thick-skinned. They come along and they think they're infallible, that they can say things without really investigating or do kind of research into what, is it all right for them to say this?
Would you call on him to apologise?
Yes, I would call him to apologise, because, as I said, he was giving condolence to a section of the family. He stuck a knife in the heart of the other part of the family. Okay, and that's what he did. And he's the cause of us coming on here today. John Murray, was going to go gently into the knife, as I said, and he's not known, because people know. But I hope they know the real John Murray now.
And the fact that today is the day that he's buried is an insignificant coincidence to you.
It is. From Friday, it's 3 years exactly to the day from the court case breakup. I mean, when we have people, guys like John O'Donovan, who champions the cause of the right to life and things like that, and that's his business. But You know, he's double standard. He's a hypocrite. But he's a rent to picket anyway. He's always getting involved in it. He's a rent to picket. That's what he is. He's a hypocrite. He champions the cause of one form of life and ignores that of a life of a child. The right to have a child, the right to have a teenager life. You know, John Murray, no matter what people said, was convicted in the court of law. And people should respect that. Otherwise, it's futile to have law in this country when people won't respect it.
Okay. Thank you both for taking my call this morning.
I appreciate you for giving us this time. I'm sorry for being emotional at the start, but, you know, it's not.
It's 100% understandable, Daniel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Neil.
Bye to you both. Linda, who would be Daniel's sister and indeed Elaine's aunt, and Daniel, dad of Elaine Murray. Again, we've had many calls into Sean Martin's mobile phone, his landline. We've left voicemail, we've left texts as well since 8:30 this morning, and I'm still waiting a response. Lines open at 1850 104 106. You can text 086 8104 106.
Call the Neil Prendeville Show now. 1850 104 106.
With Ireland's best-selling crossover, the Nissan Qashqai. You'll never look back.
Red FM.
Ever 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 look